You're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because OCD has tricked you into playing by its own rulebook. So here are three of the major things that people are doing that actually keeps them stuck in the OCD loop. If you are struggling with OCD and anxiety and you would like to get some support with that, well, I offer a free discovery call. To get that, you can head over to my website at robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes. As I'm sure you know, one of the worst things about OCD is when you're stuck in that loop, when you're trying to figure it out, when you're trying to have certainty, you get this kind of thought that pops up into your consciousness. And then you of course, feel a lot of anxiety about it. You want to deal with that anxiety. You want to push it away or get rid of it in some way. And so we perform compulsions, but the kind of the payoff that we get from a compulsion is very short-lived. We only feel better for a very, very short time. And because we had to perform a compulsion in order to feel better, well, we go straight back to the start of this cycle. And it really is a loop. And unfortunately, it's a bit like the Fibonacci sequence that over time we're kind of spinning, and this loop, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It starts encompassing more and more of our lives. And so it's so important that we learn about what are the things that kind of keep us stuck in this loop so that we can begin to kind of break out of it. So the first major thing that so many people do is actually trying to get rid of the thought itself. Now, there's a good reason for why people do this, because in OCD, many of the thoughts that people can experience can be really horrible. Can be things that people really do not want to be experiencing at all. And so, of course, it completely makes sense that you would want to get rid of that thought or disprove it or to make yourself feel better about it. But unfortunately, when we do that, we make it more and more likely that we're gonna kind of stay stuck with it. And there's a good reason for that. Whatever we kind of resist will persist. And that's a quote by Carl Jung. It's very, very true. If we try to kind of force our thoughts away, they tend to come back twice as strong. And I'm sure you've experienced that in your own life in dealing with OCD. So an important thing is that we try to allow the thoughts to be there in the background. We don't have to disprove them. We don't have to have certainty about them. Yes, they may be horrible, but when we allow them to be there, they can't really hurt us. And, if we pay less attention to them, at some point, it's likely that they'll start to kind of move on of their own accord. Number 2 is treating anxiety like it's a threat. And again, there's a good reason for why people do this. I certainly did it myself for many years. When we experience anxiety, it's of course a visceral feeling in the body. It's your sympathetic nervous system, it kind of coming online and expressing that in your body. You're feeling activated. Perhaps your body is pumping out stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And when this happens, suddenly any thoughts that were present, they suddenly seem much more threatening. And this is where we can kind of find ourselves really getting caught up in things. Our thoughts become, more and more catastrophic, and it can feel incredibly intense in the body. You can feel, sick with it. You can kind of get narrowed vision almost. You can start to panic, all sorts of physical sensations in the body, sweaty hands. It can be very, very uncomfortable. But actually, what I discovered is anxiety is something that you can learn to bring much, much more compassion and acceptance to. When we stop fighting with it, when we stop pushing it away and learn how to almost be interested in it, to try to explore it a little bit, we begin to see that actually anxiety is something that we can tolerate. We, of course, may not like it. And, I'm absolutely not asking you to do that. It's not about liking anxiety. But it's about proving to ourselves that actually we're stronger than we think, that we can put up with anxiety. We can allow it to be there. We don't need to kind of get rid of it in order to start living our lives. And I think a really, a very negative thing that many people do with anxiety is they kind of tell themselves, well, I can't start living my life properly. I can't focus on my goals and my values until this anxiety is gone. And unfortunately, when we do that, we keep ourselves stuck in the loop, in the cycle of OCD. When we are able and willing to take action, despite the fact that we're not kind of feeling up to it in that moment, despite the fact that, the anxiety may be present in our core and we're feeling very anxious. If we're able to say, right, I'm going to go and focus on a value today, or I'm going to do this goal, despite the fact that I'm really not quite feeling up to it. Well, that's when we're kind of sending a very different message to our subconscious mind by doing that. We're taking action, we're focusing on our goals. And actually, that can be very calming, and it feels really good. You're kind of proving to yourself that even if I'm not feeling fine, I can still do these important things in my life. And this starts to generate a real sense of confidence in your ability to overcome anxiety. And over time, when we do this as well, the anxiety tends to take a bit more of a back seat because now we're not so focused on it anymore. We're doing the stuff that's important to us despite the anxiety being there. The anxiety, its flavor changes in a way. It's not quite the same thing. And a lot of the time, it can kind of disappear completely because you're just focused on other things. You're doing stuff that you like doing, that you're interested in. Other emotions start to come up because now you're having some fun or you're a bit more in the present moment. And this is all about taking action and allowing the anxiety to be there. It's not something that we have to get rid of in order to start living our lives. And the next big mistake that many people make is actually measuring your progress by how you're feeling. And unfortunately, this is a really bad strategy because, as I was just talking about, sometimes you will be feeling anxious. Removing all anxiety is not really the target. And actually, that's almost an impossible thing because, sometimes we're going to feel anxiety. Anxiety is actually very closely related to excitement. When you're going to do something that you really want to do and it's very important to you, maybe a wedding day or giving a speech for something or doing something hard in any way, you may have some kind of nervousness about that, but you're probably also going to be excited. Both of those two states can kind of activate your nervous system in a similar kind of way, and maybe you'll get physical sensations that kind of feel the same. And so what I'm saying is that when you're experiencing anxiety, it is an inevitable part of life. You are going to experience it sometimes. And so if we measure our success solely on that, we're going to feel, that we're not making progress. We're going to get frustrated and angry with ourselves. Whereas if we can measure our success on, was I able to take action despite the fact that I wasn't feeling 100%? Was I able to focus on my goals and my values in this situation, even though the anxiety was very, very high? When you can start doing that, you start getting a sense of empowerment back in your life. You start realizing that you're much more strong than you thought, and you start proving to yourself that you can break out of that loop. You don't have to sit there, kind of ruminating or asking for reassurance from your friends or, checking or performing whatever compulsions you might be struggling with, because actually you're recognizing that you're allowed to feel, a bit bad today. You're allowed to have some shame there in the background or some anger or some frustration. You don't have to feel perfect. And, this can be incredibly uplifting and powerful when you give yourself permission to feel bad and actually just focus on your life anyway. One final thing, try to remember that actually you are stronger than the OCD. Of course, OCD wants to persuade us of the opposite. But when we prove to ourselves through, taking the steps that I was talking about today, through letting go of trying to, control your thoughts, through allowing difficult emotions to be there in the background and actually, taking action even when we're not feeling quite up to it. What you do is you start proving to yourself yourself that you're stronger than the OCD, and that even when you do get caught up in a kind of loop of thinking, at any given moment, you do have this ability to break free, to kind of get out of that trap. So I really hope that you found that helpful. Please remember, I offer a free discovery call. To get that, you can head over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. Please do subscribe. That really does help. And many thanks. I will see you next time. This video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are dealing with OCD, anxiety, or any mental health concerns, please consult a licensed mental health professional for support.